team, it's Gina Brooks, and today we are going to discuss empathy and why empathy is important to have if you want to be a successful leader. So first off, let's discuss what empathy is and what empathy isn't. And the best way to do that is by defining it. I'm going to actually tell you the difference between sympathy and empathy, because those are two words that often get mistaken, and they often are considered interchangeable, but there is a slight difference between empathy and sympathy. So empathy is the term we use to understand other people's feelings as if we are having them ourselves, whereas sympathy refers to the ability to take part in someone else's feelings by feeling sorrow or sadness for their misfortune. But I think the easiest and best definition of empathy is the ability to see with the eyes of another, the ability to hear with the ears of another, and the ability to feel from the heart of another. So it's basically to place yourself in someone else's shoes. And we hear that saying all the time, if only you could walk in my shoes for a day. Well, that's exactly what empathy is. It's the ability to do just that. So although being sympathetic to an individual's circumstance is very, very important, and it's a very caring trait, having empathy for someone else's situation elevates that level of understanding, and we're going to delve into exactly how that is. So empathy is important because it helps us understand how others are feeling so that we can respond to how they're feeling specifically to benefit them, right? It's not to benefit us. Empathy is to benefit the person that we're trying to understand. Empathy is also an important part of emotional intelligence, and we hear emotional intelligence often. We hear that, we hear soft skills, and having emotional intelligence is a very important skill for leaders to have. So it's important to understand what emotional intelligence is. And basically what emotional intelligence is the ability to be aware of, express, and control your emotions. Emotionally intelligent people are able to explain their feelings and their emotions and their processes, and they're able to navigate through relationships better to grow and proceed in life. So why is empathy important in leadership? Well, for one thing, I think the most important thing is it helps us bond and build relationships with our employees. And it also allows leaders an opportunity to understand and coach through poor performance or personal issues that employees having that might be affecting their performance. And I think you would agree with me, empathy is needed more now than I think ever, at least in my history as a leader. Particularly, people are struggling. I mean, I'm struggling. People are struggling with finances. People are struggling with childcare issues. People are struggling with schooling being virtual and their children being at home, and basically us taking a larger role in teaching our children. And not to mention, we've got a divisive country. We have the elections coming up. We have wildfires in California and Oregon and other states. We have hurricane warnings and other natural disasters. And that's just a few of the things, not to mention maybe things that we are struggling with in our own personal lives. I know that my family is going through a large struggle with my dad's illness right now. And as a leader, it's important to be able to be vulnerable to those situations so that you're able to be more compassionate and vulnerable to your employees' situations when and if they go through those personal struggles. And I think part of emotional intelligence is being self-aware. And that's something that I've just discussed with my daughter recently. how important it is to understand other people's feelings and what they're going through and feel compassionate and understanding for what others are going through, because it takes the view off of us and puts that on someone else that we might be able to help. So if leaders don't practice empathy at this time during this crisis, we are basically going to be in a sinking ship, and on our own we are going to attempt to bail out water out of a seeping hole on our own, because our employees will have already jumped ship. So if you don't show compassion and empathy, and if you don't try to get to understand what your employees are going through, you're not going to have any employees to help you bail out that water so the ship will stay afloat during those crisis times. Okay, so it is said that leaders have high levels of emotional intelligence, and by having high levels of emotional intelligence and empathy, leaders that practice this are able to navigate through crises better, because they have the trust and commitment of their employees, right? So there's a lot of fear and stress in the workplace due to the uncertainty of what's happening in the world right now. And an empathetic leader can help alleviate a lot of that stress and a lot of that fear through compassion and understanding what the employees are experiencing, because they are experiencing a lot of stress and a lot of uncertainty right now, and they need leaders that are able to be compassionate, empathetic, understanding, and being able to truly understand and hear and see, right? Like I said earlier, and feel through the feelings of their employees so that they are better able to coach them. So how do you become a more empathetic leader? And again, empathy is a big characteristic of a servant leader, which I'm a huge believer in servant leadership, and empathy goes hand in hand with that, okay? So one thing that a leader can do to become more empathetic is becoming more emotionally aware themselves, and that means being self-aware. That means being vulnerable, and that's something that I have been concentrating on. I know I've mentioned it in my videos, is being able to just express your vulnerability and honesty and putting it out there. And it's not everyone's cup of tea, right? But it's helped me understand who I am better, right? And then I think it's also bridged that gap between myself and maybe some of my viewers and maybe some of my employees to understand who I am at the depth of who I am. And I'm learning who I am. And that makes me, the more I learn about myself and the more I'm able to be vulnerable and acknowledge my weaknesses and my strengths, the better I'll be equipped at understanding the emotions and feelings and things that my employees are going through. So it's really important to be very self-aware of your own emotional intelligence. And that just helps you. It allows yourself to be more vulnerable and share emotions, and it's definitely an art if you're wanting to lead by example. Okay, so another way to become a more empathetic leader is to do a checkup from the neck up. That's what I call it, or like a drive-by high, and check on how your employees are doing emotionally, not just how they're doing on a project, not just did they meet their numbers, actually how are you doing? How are things at home? How are you? How are you handling this crisis? How has it affected you? Opening up those lines of communication are really important, and I think, at least with my staff and my team, we have great open dialogue, and we're all very compassionate and caring about what's going on in each other's lives. And it's really helped when we're dealing with things like COVID and other personal issues that people might be going through. So make sure that you ask them questions about what's happening in their lives, any concerns that they have with the current crisis. Is there any way that you can support them Is there any resources you can provide? Again, servant leadership hand in hand with empathetic leadership. Acknowledge their feelings and help facilitate discussions of potential solutions too. Listen to what they're saying and listen to their perspective. That is key to empathy, is understanding someone else's perspective, and listen quietly as they're telling you their perspective. You might not agree with their perspective. Their perspective might not end up being the bottom line when making decisions. But the more you get in the habit of listening and acknowledging their feelings, the better leader you will become. Okay? And then again, the last thing is be a servant leader. Empathy is at the core of servant leadership. I mean, it really is. Empathy is one way in which we do just that. What better way to serve others than to put yourself in their shoes, right? Remember, servant leadership is not about you. It is about being and serving others. So if empathy is about understanding what the person is going through, servant leadership is serving others before you serve yourself. It completely goes together. So does being an empathetic leader mean that you're weak or that you don't hold staff accountable? No, absolutely not. It absolutely does not mean that you can't hold staff accountable. You can discuss it. As a matter of fact, I think it's important to say that you are understanding and you've been flexible and you've been compassionate about someone's situation, and show that compassion. But also there has to be clear boundaries and guidelines, because there is performance that needs to occur and there are numbers that need to be met. But we can do all of that in a more caring, compassionate, loving, and in a way in which we're coaching and inspiring and encouraging our employees, rather than giving them these tough, critical, negative answers and directives. So anyway, I'm a little off my game today. I hope that you guys are empathetic, because I certainly have gone through a little bit of a challenge, and I've always been open and vulnerable with you. And I lost my stepdad a little over 3 years ago, and now my father is struggling with his life. And it's certainly sometimes very hard to be upbeat and positive, but I know that it's important to keep on keeping on. You can't stop life. You can't. You can cry for a moment, but you have to get those big girl panties on and continue on and hope to be a strength and inspiration to others. And if I do that for you, if I do that for one of you, then all of this is worth it. And I want to thank you for always being my rock, because knowing that you're here out there listening, caring, and maybe learning something and gathering a little nugget that you take elsewhere to inspire and offer empathy to others, then this is all worth it. So thank you as always, and please, if you get a moment, if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel and subscribe to my Workplace Wanda website. It just encourages me to continue doing these videos and continue to do my articles, knowing that you're out there and you're part of this vision I have of inspiring will continue to motivate me in ways that I will be forever grateful for. So anyway, have a wonderful day, and until next time, toodles, bye.